Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about Yeti's two newest bikes, the LTe and the MTe. I'm going to give you a deep dive on both bikes, how they compare, and help you decide if one's right for you. Before we get into it, please subscribe and hit that like button, and let me know what other bikes you'd like to see on the channel. If you need anything for yourself for your ride, check out Jensen USA and the other affiliate links below. Now let's get into it. On paper, these bikes are surprisingly similar, but pick one up and it's a world of difference. We're talking nearly 10 pounds for the two bikes I rode. And if we're talking about the lightest options, they go from just over 38 pounds to just under 52. I've already published full reviews for either bike, and I'll put some links down in the description below. That said, both bikes utilize Yeti's Sixfinity suspension and have all their new bells and whistles, making for two of the most premium bikes currently available. Every detail seems well thought out and a step above most of the competition. So first off, what are the differences on the mechanical side? Well, the MTe is a 140 frame with a 160 Fox 36. The LTe is a 160 frame with a 170 Fox 38. While that may belie their intentions, I wouldn't count the MTe out when it comes to gnarly terrain. Turning your eye to the Geo, these bikes are nearly identical, especially when it comes to things like head angle and reach. Where things really start to deviate is in the electric drive systems. The Yeti MTe is running the newest TQ HPR60. This is a lightweight mid-power motor, compared to the LTe's Bosch CX full power system. Because of that, you can get away with a smaller, lighter battery. Yeti is speccing the LTe with an 800 watt-hour and the MTe with a 580 watt-hour. All this adds up to, as I rode them, nearly 5-pound difference, just in the motor and battery. Before Bosch's recent update, these bikes would have felt more similar, but now, especially on the climbs, the LTe just flies up the hill. I've been riding a lot of e-bikes this summer, and it's very surprising how different these companies are approaching ride feel. While the Bosch SX motor feels awkwardly close to the CX motor, the TQ HPR feels close to that SX, but rather far behind the CX. I'll talk more about that when we get into climbing and descending. But the one thing I would note is that while the HPR's 60 Newton meters of torque is equal to the midweight competition, the Bosch SX I mentioned has 600 watts of max output and 400% support, compared to the TQ's 350 watts and 200% support. So to recap, the MTe is drastically lighter with noticeably less power, but the on-trail feel of both bikes is surprisingly similar. Now let's get into the fun stuff, as that's probably how I would decide between the two. The MTe, for lack of a better explanation, feels like a regular bike. For what I like to do, jumps, technical riding, and features, I do prefer it, but let's dig a bit deeper. In the chunk, there's no doubt the LTe wins. The LTe has downhill levels of traction and control. That said, the MTe rides like a full enduro bike and better than just about everything else out there. I would easily compare it to the best enduro bikes, and while the high speed may not be as stable, how the rear suspension handles the chunk is as good. Both bikes get a 5. On to steeps, I often talk about how bikes are designed for their local riding. This is generally me being nice about what I think is a negative. I would not go as far as to say that about the LTe or the MTe, but I really think Yeti could benefit from a higher front end. Yeah. Woo! They added 10 mils from the 160, but really could have done more. I gave the MTe just an average here, but after riding the LTe with mixed wheels, I could see that improve. Both bikes have a similar anti-rise to the suspension that keeps the front from diving while providing great traction. The LTe's 170/38 gives it the edge, and once set up, handles steeps with the best e-bikes. Especially with the lighter weight, I thought the MTe would win out here, but those mavens kept the LTe in control on even the sketchiest of rock faces. I awarded the MTe with a 3 and the LTe with a 4. Now jumping was a trade-off that keeps me wanting more from the MTe. Both bikes are heavy and cumbersome. That said, the MTe feels much more like a big long enduro bike in the air. I really think I could bump up its score with a smaller rear wheel. Oh! First ride on some real jumps. The LTe is good for 52 plus pounds, but it's really hard to ignore the weight, especially on the landings. The clunk was less than some hefty boy e-bikes, but still there, and I think only controlled by the increased leverage curve. Whoa, going big. The MTe gets a 3 and the LTe a 2. Last in the corners, again the MTe takes the win in my book. But like in the chunk, both bikes are ahead of the pack. The traction on hand is something nearing that of a DH bike. Holding a line though had two very distinctive feels. The LTe felt the weight become unmanageable if you went into the corner too fast, while the MTe was limited more by the entry speed. In chunky and loose corners, it almost never felt as though you were going to overwhelm the 145 millimeters of travel. Jumping about the trail and quickly changing directions is where the MTe won me over. Again, I gave them both 5s, but I do prefer the liveliness of the MTe. Climbing though is where you're going to be able to find minutes on the LTe. Again, the MTe just feels more like a regular bike. While the old HPR 50 didn't feel like it competed with the Fazua or Specialized, the HPR 60 is still significantly less supportive than the Bosch CX. That said, both motors offer a very natural feel. I prefer the eMTB and eMTB Plus modes of the Bosch, and all the modes of the TQ had that natural feel. Climbing, I don't know if I would ever use the lower power modes of the TQ. Sure, if I was running out of battery, but what's the point of an e-bike if it's not going to go faster? Time for me is more valuable than distance. Unfortunately, I was not able to do a proper range test on the TQ, but I was impressed with the range I did use. It should be noted that the battery is quite a bit larger than the old Trek Fuel EXE, and that bike helped me set my benchmark for lightweight e-bike range tests, of which the Levo SL2 failed. So the MT is likely closer to a full power bike for range, just slower. Back to the faster versus slower comparison. The LTe has the levels of power and support that are hard to keep up with and even handle on tight single track. The MT is fast, but at a manageable speed. Also, both these bikes top out at 20 miles per hour, but I don't think you'll ever get close to that on a climb with the MT. Yes, it's still plenty fast, but the updated Bosch and DJI motors are on another level. The last thing to note is overrun. The Bosch motor has a preset amount of overrun depending on the mode, and that's essential for technical climbing. TQ does not. It's funny because I've had the experience of killing the battery on the old Trek EXE and then looking down and seeing I had plenty of gears to complete my climb. However, when it comes to technical climbing, without that assistance, if the motor cuts out and you're in the harder gear, even with the lighter weight, you're going to get hung up. Sure, you can work around it by shifting down as you approach a technical section, but with the Bosch, you can just hammer into it with reckless abandon. Oh. So let's talk about the non-e-bike climbing aspects. First, body position, both bikes are spot on. The LTe is slightly longer, but with the steeper seat tube feels basically the same. Efficiency and traction, you can see it in the graph here, but the LTe leans traction while the MT has more support for efficiency. What that means for when you're on the pedals though is both have a very neutral efficiency to traction feel. Because you can put down more power with the LTe, you need that extra traction, but you don't feel like you're moving more. Last, on the switchbacks, I gave it to the MT because of the balance, but also the lack of weight keeps you from tipping over on slow switchbacks. And the overall shorter wheelbase just makes it more manageable. I was surprised with what I could do on the LT, but it's still a lot of work. So this is how those climbing categories look. Overall, the LTe and the Bosch is faster with some margin, and even while heavier, tackles technical situations with more ease. For me personally though, the MT still has plenty of support and quickness. So who are these bikes for and what are my final thoughts? Well, this one's kind of easy for me. If your friends all have full power e-bikes, you gotta go with the LTe. If you plan to race at all, you'll also want that extra power. If you've already been riding a full power e-bike, then again, the LTe is right for you. However, if you want an e-bike that feels like your current ride, the MT may be the way to go. If you're small, it also may be better because of that lower weight. Until last year, my experience on e-bikes was pretty minimal, but after this past winter and summer, I can more see the appeal. Also because of my newer entry into the e-bike world, the bikes I've been riding have been in the high 40s for weight, so this 52-pound monster seems excessive. However, if you're already used to those bikes, then the added support and range of these newer bikes is going to be greatly appreciated. And it may even be lighter than your old bike. I feel I should also comment on the noise side of things. The TQ may be lighter, but the new Bosch is quiet as well, and not many people will notice a big difference. The other big unknown, at least to me, is the motor. My previous experience with TQ was not great. The motor failed and support from the local shop was just bad. I would say two things about that. If you have a great local shop that can help, it shouldn't be an issue. Furthermore, with Yeti's move to direct customer sales, they've assumed more of the service and warranty liability, and have geared up to take care of their customers. Bosch has a much larger support structure, but I do think that all these businesses should be working on building out customer service beyond the IVD. Fox historically struggled with warranty, but in recent years has built out a comprehensive and timely warranty process. SRAM, Bosch, and Shimano take note, this isn't a fleeting trend. Yeti's latest e-bikes are their best yet, and the Sixfinity suspension is something special. And regardless of which you choose, you're likely going to have a great time. Whether you want all the power and range or something that feels more traditional, you have an option. Lastly, I think both these bikes have enough brute to take on any trail you can find. Ooh. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. I have more videos coming with the LT and that new Fox podium. If you need anything for yourself or your ride, check out Jensen USA, evo.com, Hover Air, and more. Affiliate links are in the description and on my channel's page. Now get out there, go fast, and take chances. See you next week.